All right, we had a massive patch come out here for Dungeonborne, and I had a video on Cryomancer, and this entire patch made it obsolete. So I'm covering the patch notes right now. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do this is by pretty much just giving you a quick rundown of what the patches are, or what the patch includes. And really the kind of spark notes here is that Cryomancer got a complete rework with the way that its spiritual energy works and the way that Frostbite Curse works. Right now, or prior to this, the way that Cryomancer was operating was that it had a very high skill floor and a very low skill ceiling, meaning it was very hard to jump into it, but once you got into it and understood stuff, you could become a top tier god. That has been completely restructured, mainly around Frostbite Curse and working with the passives. So it's mainly just kind of changing the way that spiritual energy works now from 260 to 100 and all of the percentage costs of each ability. Basically, everything costs 5% more now. I'll break it down in that respective section. Rogue got a new ability that can now basically turn the entire team invisible if they're stacked around them. And Vanish is now a 60-second invisibility with a 10-second cooldown if you break it. So nice tweaks over there to the Rogue. The Swordmaster just got a nerf. Well, not necessarily a nerf. It was a fix to an issue where no one could block the whirling blade of the Blade Master, causing lots of damage. Now you can effectively block it, and it can mitigate 75% of the damage when you do block, as always. Shadow Knight got, or not Shadow Knight, Death Knight got a nice little buff to its Q capability, Soul Shroud, I think it's Soul Shroud, to make it cast faster. And the decay ability from the dexterity passive now does, rather than 15%, 25% reduction to movement. So that's the kind of spark notes of all of the major changes here. We're going to go through the rest of the stuff here, but if that's all you wanted to know, it's a patch note video. You can find a link below. You can go ahead and read it, but this is for those who just kind of want to listen along. That's pretty much the down and dirty of everything. So feel free to just simply shut the video down and get back to enjoying your day. But for those that want to stick around and learn everything, let's jump through this. So the way I do things with this too is you've got pretty much 3 or 4 colors. Green is some sort of buff or cool new thing. Yellow is usually like something I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. It's neither a buff nor a nerf. Red is a full-on nerf, and cyan is usually just something I want to call out. So new content has been added. We got a new event, the Shadow Constellation. So rogues now have that new E skill, Shadow Veil. Team up with your rogue buddies to experiment with new tactics. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But participate in a limited time event to earn exclusive awards. So you'll have that as well. New items in the shop. So if you want new weapon skins, you can get new weapon skins. I don't really care about them, but they're there. The skeletal weapon skins don't really interest me very much. We have an increased spawn rate for shadow portals in both maps, but now mainly shadow portals can now also appear in Corsair Castle, both casual and classic. So you can go and jump into the really hard boss fight with the Vengeful Monarch. So if you want to do that, you can now do it. You don't have to simply run Sinner's End, and I'm really stoked on that because I like Corsair Castle way more than Sinner's End. Now for class balance, this is the big one, right? Let's talk about Cryomancer. So Cryomancer here, the dev pretty much gave us a comment on why they did what they did. Like I said earlier, low-end cryos struggled with soul energy management, while high-end cryos enjoy the highest damage floor and ceiling. So it just was way too hard to break into the class. Then once you mastered the class, you were just a complete god. So going through the damage, what they've really done here is changed the way that Frostbite Curse works and Bone Chilling, the will passive. So the will passive, Bone Chilling, now requires a minimum distance of 15 meters. It was 1 meter before. So you were able to use this a lot. That was what gave you the increased damage. So now that increased damage, to start gaining increased damage, and the maximum damage bonus is achieved at 25 meters instead of 15. This significantly reduces the situations where Frostbite Curse can gain the max damage boost. So it gives you a much different variance, right? So you have basically a damage buff in between 25 to 15 meters. Then as soon as someone traverses 15 meters into 14 meters, you no longer have a damage buff from Bone Chilling. So this was being abused before and is no longer that way. Frostbite Curse no longer reduces the cold resistance, which is a huge nerf to Frostbite Curse because it was one of the strongest things about it, right? You could use Frostbite Curse and now all of your melee weapons would do increased damage to the target. This is no longer going to be the case. But Frostbite Curse, as a result, got an increase to its damage from 30% up to 36% to ensure that low-end cryo damage remains roughly unchanged. This is a gnarly nerf. I think it's going to really change the way people play Cryomancer, and I'm really curious to test it out and get a good feel for it. I personally, I really like Cryomancer because it did have that really, okay, you have to manage a lot of things, and once you learn how to manage them and get a good feel for the distance, Cryo can get just so fun. But I feel like they just kind of really ripped the, what's it called? Ripped the tablecloth out from underneath it, or whatever the Ghostbusters thing I'm trying to talk about. That would just kind of is punishing. So I want to see and put these into practice to really get a good feel for it. But Cryomancer just got a pretty significant nerf, especially this one. Like these, you know, okay, this is to create a certain play style for the Cryomancer. But when then I see stuff like this and stuff that we're going to see later in these patch notes, it completely removes the melee teeth of the Cryomancer entirely, right? Like, okay, yeah, you can still hit things with a dagger or with a sword and hit them in range and all that stuff. But having that no longer, that cold resistance reduction is going to be pretty punishing, because if people close the distance on you, they can just rip and grip through you. For soul energy, though, that too has been completely changed. So now the max soul energy that a cryo has been reduced from 260 to 100, and everything else has respectively changed. So Frostbite Curse now costs 20 rather than 40. Ice Storm now costs 30 rather than 60, and Ice Armor now costs 10 rather than 25. And it's hard to really picture or at least get a feel for what this means. So let's take a look at this. So before, if I were to cast Frostbite Curse, it would take up 25% of my mana, because 40% or 40 of, 40 is 15%. Sorry, I got Ice Storm and Frostbite Curse mixed up right there. I have notes on the right side. So Frostbite Curse would cost 15% of your mana. Now, since it's out of 100, it costs 20%. So it's a 5% increase in the cost for Frostbite Curse. And it even says, this combined with the energy cap change lowers the max casts from 6.5 to 5. Because we have a 5% increase on the cost for Frostbite Curse. Now, Ice Storm has gone down from 60 to 30, and you're thinking, oh, cool, it's 30 energy cheaper. Well, prior to this, Ice Storm cost 25% of your mana. Now it costs, since it's 30 out of 100, 30% of your mana. That's pretty rough. Ice Armor isn't much of a change. It went from 9.6% of your energy to now a solid 10%, so it's a 0.4% increase. That's not massive. So you can see that it's now going to cost you 5% more to use all of your abilities as a Cryomancer. Luckily enough, the Dexterity passive Permafrost hasn't been changed too much. So this says it restores 1 energy rather than 2 energy when dealing critical damage, but you now have, rather than 260 soul energy, you have 1. So that is, as far as it's concerned, pretty much the same. You're going to get a very equal amount of soul energy per critical hit, because it was 0.3% of your total you're getting returned with, I'm sorry, not 0.3, I think it's 0.6. I have to use the voodoo of a calculator right now is going to help me out with this, because my brain's not very cool. It's 0.76, sorry. So you were getting 0.76 of your mana back every time you were critting with Permafrost. Now you get 1% of your mana back. So it ultimately is going to help you out, but still you're casting at a 5% increase on all of your casts, which is really rough overall for the class. Some other changes, though, is the casting range of Ice Storm has been increased to 12 meters, and the max travel distance has been increased to 25 meters to improve the skill's initiation capability and adapt to the will passive changes. I really don't feel like this was a problem. Because I feel like, honestly, this was a really strong ability, and it was a really great initiator. It was a really great mid-fight thing. It was really great to use right as your team would collapse on the other. Okay, boom, now I've got Ice Storm ripping and gripping. Maybe this gives you the ability to now do it from range a little bit better than you were before, but nonetheless. Thunderclap Flask has had its slow effect reduced by 25% here, and its durations have increased as a result from 4 to 6 seconds. So that is now present. The potential upcoming change, it says potential. I would just say it's coming. Almost all their potential upcoming changes have happened. We plan to adjust the stacking logic of slow effects to multiplicative and add a minimum movement speed to prevent players from being immobilized by multiple slow effects. I think another thing, too, that would change this, a lot of games have dealt with this, right? A lot of slowing effects. I think, what's it called? Not depreciating, but the basically Diminishing returns. I think diminishing returns is the better system here, because then it makes the repeated casting of slowing effects punishing on the caster, because it forces them to learn and adapt. If you do stuff like this, you can still kind of force your way through the system if there's certain multiplicatives and certain base movement speeds. I think diminishing returns is a better resulting system, because again, it punishes the caster and they have to learn timing and so on and so forth. Now, onto the rogue, we have the new skill, Shadow Veil. So after a 3-second prep, nearby allies except the Panther enter stealth for 15 seconds. This is going to be really cool to initiate team fights, but it's also going to be really great to just say, hey, we've got like a minute left. There's a 3-person portal coming up over there. I can use Shadow Veil on us and we can jump through the portal without having to clear any monsters. And we only have like a minute left to get out of here, whatever the situation is. Shadow Veil, I think, is going to add a lot of really cool support to the rogue class, which previously was a very selfish class, right? It was only concerned with doing the damage. This now enables you to initiate team fights in a much different way. The skill Vanish has changed now from it was just simply you could insta-cast a 6-second invisibility. Now invisibility lasts for 30 seconds. I said 60 seconds earlier, I apologize. Invisibility lasts for 30 seconds and breaking invisibility triggers a 10-second cooldown. So you now get a double long stealth, but it has a cooldown with it once you break the invisibility, so you can't just quickly jump back into it. For the Swordmaster, they got their nerf here. So basically, I want to say I'm calling it a nerf, but it's not, right? Fixed a critical issue. So it was a bug that was making it so that if you had Whirling Blade up, people couldn't block against it. You would hold down block, but you'd still take full damage. So basically, it would be a constant chipping 30 damage dot against you that would just completely rough and tumble you. Now, though, you can block it. And not only can you block it, you can also trigger block-related effects such as Dual Dagger's self knockback and Longsword's perfect parry. So you can really get some fun action going here with the blocking the Swordmaster's Whirling Blade, and you also have the 75% damage reduction of everything that does block in this game. Added a visual effect to indicate damage reduction when the stamina passive deflection is active as well. So that's not necessarily it's a buff, but it's a nice thing to have. The Mithril Shadow for the Mithril Order has basically a skill stealth is changed to what the new Vanish is, right? It's a 30-second invis with a 10-second cooldown. The Death Knight really came out on top, as you can see. Reduced the casting time from the Q skill Soul Shroud. That was the biggest problem with Soul Shroud, is you're doing more damage and it scales better with your strength, but it was taking you time to cast this. People would be getting 2-3 massive hits off on you by the time you'd finish channeling Soul Shroud. It was kind of a pain in the ass. And now the Dexterity passive for Soul Shroud Decay helps with 15 to now 25% slow. Increase the slow effect of Soul Shroud and Dexterity passive from 15 to 25%. I read that wrong. I thought it was only the Dexterity passive. It's both. So that's a nice thing to have. Fix an issue causing stuttering when using two-handed swords or maces, or mace and shield while Q is active, so that you can actually get those things off effectively. Ultimately, Death Knight's in a weird place, but the last 2 patches, I think, have made it a lot better with the damage reduction you get from Soul Shroud or Soul Storm, and now Decay giving you a sense of not just a 15, but a 25% slow effect. It does not reflect this in the tooltip right now. They said they'll fix this in another patch. It was just a tooltip issue, but effectively in the game, it does work 100%. It's just not reflecting it on the tooltip. For Druid, Shadow Assault will now actually properly interrupt certain enemy actions, such as bandaging, similar to other attacks, and it should hopefully interrupt stuff like the Werewolf. Certain attacks the Werewolf does can be interrupted, so hopefully now Shadow Assault will work like that with the Druid. A big one here with the Priest is there's no buffs or debuffs, but they've acknowledged that the Priest is in a bad spot, and it's one of their highest priorities. We've been working on this for a while now, including some major changes and new skill options, some of which are already in testing. So hopefully we should be able to see those in August, along with a lot of the really cool stuff coming with August. In addition to, we have the gameplay balance. So increase the number of static escape portals in classic mode, Close Out Castle. There can now be 2 fixed escape portals, which is nice. It's a pretty big map and it was hard to get to some of those portals. And the Resurrection Shrine has a 10-minute cooldown on it now. You didn't have this before. You could pretty much just go and pop a stone all the time, or just get multiple stones. You could really go to town with the Resurrection Shrine. That is not the case. Also, the Vengeful Monarch's AI has been adjusted here to alternate its skills, so you actually have a little bit more breathing room. Equipment balance 2. Gloves and boots now have defense and attack levels on them, so they can help you jump into classic maps easier. Your lightning staff has a properly displayed attack range indicator, so you can actually see it on funky terrain. Tiny Torment will no longer affect teammates, and some other set bonuses here. Take a look at those if you're jumping into them pretty heavily. For your others here, opening the tab during a game will display the player's shield value below their health if you have it. So if someone's casted a shield as a priest, you're playing a Shadow Knight, you have the stamina passive, any way that you can get a damage shield, you now will see the actual numerical value of that damage shield. Defending with a mace, adjusted the attack angle when defending with mace and shield, and optimize the animation of one-handed maces and basic attack combos. This should help us out for anyone who's trying to really kind of go with a Shadow Knight tanky. Why am I saying Shadow Knight? A Death Knight tanky build, using mace and shields to turn on quite a bit of stamina to get that stamina passive up and going. Optimize the combat area of the Cyclops in classic mode, giving players more space to fight. Adjusted the AI logic of some monsters. Don't like this. Ranged monsters will detect players at a greater distance, while reducing the tracking range of some monsters, making it easier for players to escape pursuit. I do like that. Optimize monster placement near spawn points to prevent immediate engagement upon entering the game, which is really lovely. And then for some bug fixes here, there's plenty of other stuff here, like about optimize the visual dynamic of cloaks, or optimize the escape portal effects. I didn't really feel like talking about those yet. I just did, but whatever. Fix an issue in competitive mode where the cryotherapy passive stack count was incorrect under certain conditions. So you'd be seeing a incorrect amount and be like wondering, why the hell didn't I get healed as much, or why did I get healed too little, whatever the situation was. Fix an issue where the game could automatically switch to windowed mode if it lost focus while on full screen, something that's happened to me multiple times. But those are your big patch notes here for Dungeonborne. What's my overall hot take on this? I don't even know why I said hot take. I don't have a hot take. It's a good take. I think all these are mostly very positive. I think the Cryomancer stuff is pretty punishing. I think it's going to change the way people play Cryomancer, though. Maybe they were thinking people are playing Cryomancer a little too close. They're too much of like a hybrid melee class when we don't want you to play like that. We want you to hang back. But I think at the same time, when you play a Pyromancer, you hang back. You stay way back. You stay way high up. You stay as far away from stuff as you can, and you launch fireballs of doom. You don't really have that capability as a Cryomancer. You can't really launch big nukes with Frostbite Curse, and Ice Storm is effective only in the times in which it's effective, which is major team fights that people have collapsed into melee. You can create a lot of good poke and engagement tension with the Pyromancer that you cannot do with the Cryomancer. So I think a lot of these nerfs were maybe needed. I don't really know, to be totally honest. I think that the Cryomancer was in a pretty cool, fun slot. It was hard to master, but once you mastered, you got really good at it. I think that the spirit of these nerfs changed the dynamic of the character, or of the class. And I think that ultimately the problem with it is you've changed the effectiveness, the use case or whatever of the class, but not given it any tools to really sharpen its teeth in the engagement style you want it to be. I feel like Dungeonborne, the devs, want it to be a more mid to long range class, but all these nerfs have kind of taken out the ability to be that or be a short mid-range class. I don't know. It's kind of funky. I'm saying all this by reading this without actually having put any of these into practice and getting a good feel for them. They might actually be pretty nice and play really well, but I think ultimately it's gonna come down to what it feels like more so than me just reading obscure patch notes and trying to apply the logic to them without kind of putting any playtime into it. So if you've played the Cryomancer here, the patch has been out for a couple hours. Go ahead and let me know how you feel about these patch notes. Do you feel that they've been on point with the Cryomancer? I feel like we probably need a little bit, not more love, but I think we needed a different nerf for the Swordmaster. This is a good nerf, right? That's a critical change to be fixed. I think the Swordmaster needs a bit of a tweak for its spectral blades, and I don't know what it could be, right? Like maybe it takes longer to queue up each blade, making it so that you as a Swordmaster player, you really need to get a good skill shot in with all four because it took a long time to queue up all four. Maybe it goes, hypothetically speaking, maybe it takes 1 second to queue up the first blade, then 2 seconds for the queue up the second, then 3 seconds for the third, 4 seconds for the fourth. I'm just throwing out blanket numbers here to create a hypothetical, but maybe if it was like that, spectral blades would have a high risk, high reward. Yeah, if I'm going to hit you with the spectral blades, then bam, you're good. And I think too that it needs some form of cooldown if you cancel it. not if you miss. If you miss, go to town. If you cancel it, it needs to have a cooldown, because what people are doing is they're queuing up spectral blades, going through doors, queuing up spectral blades, going through doors. Basically, they're running around the map with a full 4 stack of spectral blades trying to find you. They unleash them into you and you just get fucked. So I think that spectral blades needs to be more of a skill shot, because they can track. And I need it's like a 40% track, right? It's like a light skill. It's like a light aimbot. I think it needs to be higher risk, higher reward to make it have more teeth, while also feeling like, I ran right into the Swordmaster Spectral Blades and that's why I died. Versus, yeah, I got fucked by a four stack Spectral Blades and I didn't even see it out of nowhere. Like, man, that sucked. Like, I feel too often that when I encounter a Swordmaster, they open up with those 4 blades to my face because they can just queue them up so easily that it rips you up from the start. And then Whirling Blade would just kind of finish you off. But now this at least helps you a little bit in your survivability once you engage with them. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you feel about these patch notes, what could change. I haven't done a patch notes video in forever. Like I said, this Cryomancer patch completely threw my video off, so I have to completely redo it here. So I figured let's just get a quick video out, and this is what came to mind. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.